wasn't created, it is eternal, as demonstrated by the logical syllogism of 1. If matter can neither be created nor destroyed. 2. Something cannot come from nothing. 3. Since we have something, matter exists. 4. Therefore something/matter has always existed and was not created. The Buddhist Nagarjuna argues that 1. Matter cannot be caused by matter, since it implies matter already pre-existing to cause itself. 2. Matter cannot be caused by non-matter, since what is immaterial cannot cause the material. Epicurus, letter to Herodotus. First, nothing can be created out of that which does not exist. We conclude this to be true because if things could be created out of that which did not exist, we would see all things being created out of everything, with no need of seeds, and our experience shows us that this is not true. Second, nothing is ever completely destroyed to non-existence. We conclude this because if those things which dissolve from our sight completely cease to exist, all things would have perished to nothing long ago. If all things had dissolved to non-existence, nothing would exist for the creation of new things, and we have already seen that nothing can come from that which does not exist. Epicurus, letter to Herodotus. The first cause. Some claim that God is the unmoved mover or the first cause based on the logical construction that every cause has a preceding effect, therefore, there must have been a first cause. However, this argument is contradictory because the concept of first implies time, while cause implies causality. Therefore, if God is to be considered the first cause, he cannot operate outside of causality and time. If this first cause exists beyond time, it cannot genuinely be first. Time itself was not created, there can be no before time, as before presupposes a temporal context. Furthermore, for a cause to precede its effect, God must also precede his creation, which again necessitates the existence of time. The causal contradiction lies in this: if God operates outside of the chain of causality, then he cannot be a cause and therefore cannot cause any effect. If time has any meaning at all, it comes from either a change in events or a sequence of events. Time is measured in change. Therefore, creation requires time. If there was a before creation and a post-creation, this would require God to be time-bound, or that God did not create or take any action at all before time existed. If God simultaneously created the universe and time, then there was no before the universe and time, and therefore, the universe was created from the moment God began to exist. If God is eternal, then the universe also is eternal. Moreover, if one already believes in an infinite, eternal, uncaused, uncreated entity, namely, God, why not simply believe that the material universe is infinite, eternal, uncaused, and uncreated? This perspective avoids the unnecessary complexity of introducing a mystical personification of a father figure. Instead, we might accept the universe as it is, reflecting current scientific understanding that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. This viewpoint effectively merges the spiritual, magical, and supernatural beliefs with our contemporary scientific understandings of the universe. The creation question. Why did God create the world, or anything at all? If God, whether called Brahman, Ishvara, Yahweh, or another name, is perfect, whole, undivided, and complete, why create the world? Why not simply exist in absolute perfect bliss and peace? What is the purpose of starting the drama that is creation? Why initiate any action that disrupts this perfect state of peace and bliss? When it comes to why God created people, many theists assert it was out of love. However, this raises a crucial question: does love depend on the existence of the other? If love depends on the other, then there was no love prior to God's creation of people. In this case, God cannot be defined as love, since love would require an object or recipient. If love does not depend on the other, then God already possessed love. This raises another question: why create people at all if love already existed in God's complete state? These inquiries challenge the traditional notions of divine creation. The watchmaker argument. The abstract concept of creation serves as another example of humanity projecting its own characteristics onto the universe. People often anthropomorphize themselves in relation to the cosmos. Humans create various things by combining mechanical parts to build machines, boats, cars, and musical instruments. We then use these instruments to produce sounds, combining them to create musical melodies. Similarly, we create brushes and canvases to paint and produce art. However, based on our own experiences of creating, we assume, presume, and project this illogical expectation onto the universe itself. It is an unfounded proposition that since humans make watches, God must also be a watchmaker. Furthermore, it is an even more baseless assertion that the universe must be a watch. This argument relies on the logical fallacies of false equivalence and begging the question. Fine-tuning. To claim that life requires fine-tuning or strict physical and material parameters to exist while also asserting that life transcends or is a supernatural component beyond the physical or material dimension is a contradiction. This position is nonsensical. A world that was not fine-tuned, one that is actually inhospitable to life yet, against all odds, still became abundant with it would be a stronger argument for divine intervention than a finely tuned world. Such a scenario would be a miracle. However, theists would argue for a God in both cases, wanting to have it both ways. This demonstrates that they are arguing from a presumptive bias and preconceived notions rather than from the available evidence. The universe itself is not fine-tuned for life, which is why it shows no signs of life beyond our little blue marble. Therefore, the fine-tuning argument is absurd. Why would God create billions of galaxies, filled with billions of solar systems containing billions of planets, if his divine plan pertains only to humans and judging the world? There is no fine-tuning. It's a logical fallacy known as begging the question. In reality, all life strives to adapt to its environment. How can we claim there is fine-tuning when we would have felt the same way even if the laws of nature were different? Unfortunately, this is the only world we know, which makes it appear perfect and fine-tuned for human life. Evidence shows that organisms exist in many hostile conditions, such as in the depths of the ocean, which are inhospitable to humans. Humans often use this fine-tuning argument solely in relation to human life. Nevertheless, it doesn't mean that some bacteria couldn't thrive in many potential non-fine-tuned universes. Those bacteria would also contend that their universe was fine-tuned for them. Fine-tuning is often defined as conditions that sustain human life. Since we primarily care about ourselves, we can argue that whatever circumstances we find ourselves in are profound and intentional, in contrast to being mere happenstance or randomness. One might argue, these conditions are conducive to human life, therefore we, as human beings, could only observe fine-tuning. Without it, we wouldn't be here to observe at all. However, this is not profound. It is, in fact, to be expected and quite mundane. This argument begs the question, is life the goal or ultimate intention of fine-tuning? This is an absurd assumption and unprovable. I could make a similar claim and state that this universe, with all its precise variables and fine-tuning over millions of galaxies and billions of planets, was fine-tuned for the sole purpose of our particular planet's weather cycle. Our exact weather cycle, seasonal changes, and temperature variations would not occur unless precise factors such as distance from the sun, the Earth's spin rate, and many others are in place to result in this weather cycle. Therefore, the ultimate purpose and intention of the great creator God was to fine-tune the universe for this planet's weather cycle. Another way to demonstrate the faulty reasoning of the fine-tuning argument is the fact that we only know of and can observe this particular universe. We have no other universe with which to compare it. Thus, any claim regarding fine-tuning or probability for this universe is meaningless. These terms maintain their meaning only when compared to other potential outcomes. Since we have only this outcome, we can't make any claims regarding the probability or precision involved, and thus fine-tuning has no meaning.